Turn it up. You're listening to Live and Loud with the Lord, Nelson, that is.
How to spot the narcissist instantly. Oh, how you empaths desire the capability to spot the narcissist instantly, having some kind of inbuilt narc vision which would enable you to spot and evade us from the very beginning. How much easier your lives would be. No longer would the addiction that you have to the narcissist by reason of being an empath cause you such difficulties. You would spot and evade. You would identify us at the earliest opportunity before we are able to get our claws upon you, sink our fangs into you, before we are able to weave that dark magic that pulls you close to us and keeps you tight as we gorge on the prime aims.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, you know who it is. It's the big guy with the little show. Yes, indeed. It's the Lord. Nelson, that is, from the Live and Loud with the Lord podcast on the CMS network. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm so ready for this conversation with our special guest. This is a young man who's an incredible author and an expert in his field of study. And I'm looking forward to him shedding light and getting us right with the topic so many of us swear we know about. We really swear we know about this, but really we don't have any idea, and that's narcissism. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the Live and Loud with the Lord podcast, Mr. H.G. Tudor. And got to clap you up, young man. Thank you for being here. Yes, indeed. So
you're very welcome. Thank you for that enthusiastic introduction. Much appreciated.
No problem, man. Listen, I've been to England and London. I don't know if that's where you're from, but that's what I'm going to ask you. I always ask these two questions. The first question is, where are you from?
Well, where am I from? I'm from quite a few different places. Okay. I have lived in London for a period of time. I don't actually live there anymore. Okay. And at the moment, I'm speaking to you from a very rainy part of Central Europe.
Central Europe, man. I've been there many times, and it has rained a lot when I've been over there, but it's been beautiful still, though. So it's all
yes.
So what's the best thing about being from there, from being from Europe?
Well, when you say what's the best thing about being there from Europe, you have to appreciate that you have some 20 or so countries, if not more, all squeezed into the space which would fit very easily into your own country.
Right.
So you can take those in the Iberian Peninsula, those who are Portuguese and Spanish, and they would tell you certain things about their countries, which they would regard as being good. Then compare it to, say, the Scandinavians, the Norwegians, the Swedes and the Danes, and then wider to the Nordics, including Finland and Iceland. So when you say what is a good thing about being European, that covers so many different things.
I got you.
So it's a very expansive question, and I couldn't claim that I speak for all Europeans. If you were to say, what's a good thing about being British? Well, one of the good things about being British is that our language is the lingua franca of the world as a consequence of our empire. And then, of course, the dominant nations being involved in commerce, medicine, technology, so that many people in the world speak English as a second language on top of those countries, as the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada and Australia, that have New Zealand, that have English as their first language. But the traits of our empire still live on through that. Another good thing about being British is that we have a rich and varied history in terms of not only on our own sceptred isle, in terms of the castles and stately homes, but also the fact that we went around the world. One thing that we Brits were very good at doing was winning wars. We were very good at going to other people's countries and saying, knock, knock, we're coming in, and if you don't like it, too bad, we're going to fight you. And sometimes we'd lose, but a lot of the time we'd win. And as a consequence of that, we were also very good at saying to people, okay, we have all of this technological advance, and what we're going to do is use it to keep you in place, and then we're going to take some of your resources back to our country, thank you very much, and make us even richer. And so as a consequence of that, it enabled us to be innovators. So we were innovators to some extent already, and then we utilized the fruits of the empire to increase that even further. And of course, we have many things that have come out of Britain in terms of entertainment. So a lot of excellent music has come out of the United Kingdom. Football, or soccer, as you would say, is very popular around the world. The Premier League is one of the most watched leagues in the world. And of course, football was invented in the United Kingdom. So there are many good things about being British that come out of it. So, I could go on for some time, I suppose.
I got you. No, and I'm glad that you answered that. That's the answer I wanted. It was about Britain and where you're from. So that's beautiful. Sure. I said Europe because you said you've been many places. So I just incorporated everything. So I was introduced to you by my friend Jane, and she said you helped her with some trauma she had with a narcissist. So a lot of us throw around the word narcissist like we really understand what it means. Can you please educate us with your definition of a narcissist?
Okay. So a person who is a narcissist is somebody who has a narcissistic personality disorder. And that means that they cross a particular threshold in terms of certain behaviors, such as acting with a sense of entitlement, having no emotional empathy, acting without accountability, having grandiose behaviors, being haughty, being dismissive, exhibiting magical thinking, engaging in certain manipulative behaviors, having no or poor boundary recognition, and showing various aspects of the narcissistic dynamic. And different types of narcissists score more highly with regard to some of those categories that I've explained, but they all get over a particular threshold. Now, of course, the DSM details the specific traits that it refers to in terms of what is a narcissist. And that, as a cluster B personality disorder, of course, covers the things that I've mentioned essentially there. Talking about a grandiose sense of self-importance, preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, believing that they're special, requires excessive admiration, is interpersonally exploitative, and so on and so forth. And those various facets are covered in what I've talked about. But why I do it is to define it in a way that ensures that the different types of narcissist are covered. Because the traditional view of a narcissist is basically a man who's in love with himself. He's always looking in the mirror, kissing his guns, running around chasing women, talking about, he makes X amount of bank and, he's the best at this and the best at that. That's just one type of narcissist that exists. The important thing is to recognize those traits, and they can appear, they can manifest in lots of different ways. Now, at the heart of it, a person who is a narcissist, the bulk of narcissists are unaware. And they are unaware that they are a narcissist, and they are unaware that they pursue what's known as the prime aims. The prime aims are 1, control, 2, fuel, 3, character traits, 4, residual benefits. And whenever it comes to an interaction with another human being, the narcissist must pursue at least 1, if not all 4 of those things. So let's take, for example, my conversation with you today. Okay? I don't suspend my narcissism as I'm talking to you, but I'm aware of it because I'm an aware narcissist. But let's assume for a moment that I wasn't. And in the conversation I'm having with you, I would have to assert control over you. Now, that's pretty easy because you've said, H.G, I'd like to interview you, come on my show. You're interested in what I have to say. You're listening patiently, asking respectful questions. So there's no issue with control, but I have to have it. I also gain fuel from you. When you nod, when I say something, when you react to something, if you laugh or you compliment me, you're providing me with positive fuel. So that's all good as well. So I'm gaining those 2 things from you. I might not be gaining any character traits from you, but you might talk about something that I wasn't aware of, and I might then take that for myself and pass it off as my own experience in a conversation with somebody else. Then finally, there's the residual benefit. Now, that covers things such as money. That's a big residual benefit. Facade management, access to networks, pleasure, lots of different things. Here, part of why I do these interviews and why I do all my YouTube videos, blog articles is to extend my legacy. So when I talk to you today, I'm consciously, because I'm aware, controlling you, drawing fuel from you, and managing my facade so that I was here on time, that I don't speak to you in a rude manner, because then you think that was an interesting interview, your listeners think that was interesting, and that they might then be tempted to access my services, and it extends my legacy. So, for instance, in this instance, rather, I'm pursuing the prime aims. Now, I'm an aware narcissist, and we are very rare. There are other aware narcissists, but most narcissists are unaware. But what's subconsciously going on, their narcissism, like a background app, is enabling them to get those four things that I mentioned. Sometimes it only needs to be one, control. And that might be walking away from somebody to get that control. On other occasions, it might be as a consequence of speaking to somebody, controlling them and drawing fuel. So it's just two of the four things. So it varies. But whenever we have an interaction with another human being or a potential interaction, then what happens is that our narcissism is guiding us in the pursuit of the prime aims. And it's important to recognize that and not fall into the trap of thinking, well, the narcissist was being nice. There is some goodness in there. No, it's just the appearance of being nice to you to get to those prime aims. Everything we do, and I repeat, everything that we do is about getting to those prime aims when it comes to other people. If I'm in the shower having a wash, that's nothing to do with the prime aims, because I'm washing myself because I like to stay clean and smell good. But if I think to myself, I'm taking out this blonde prospect tonight, she's a bit of a hottie, I want to seduce her, and I might reach for a particular type of shower gel, thinking she will really like the smell of that, okay? So I'm going to go and get that particular shower gel. There, the prime aims are applicable. Why? Because I'm thinking about an interaction with somebody else. So my narcissism guides me to take the steps to think about how I might control her by choosing perhaps a particular smell. I might know, for instance, that this particular lady really loves the smell of sandalwood. Right. So I pick something that has that as one of its top notes in the fragrance that I wear or the shower gel that I'm going to use as part of my seduction of her. So when I'm just washing myself, that's nothing to do with the prime aims. It's about me. But if I'm thinking to myself, I need to be clean and smell good because I'm going to try and seduce this lady on a date tonight, boom, the prime aims are applicable. If I pour myself a drink of water because I'm thirsty, that's nothing to do with the prime aims. But if my girlfriend comes in and she's been out for a jog and she's perspiring and she looks thirsty, when I pour her a drink, that isn't me being nice. That's the appearance of being nice in order to control her by triangulating her in a benign fashion with the drink that I'm pouring for her. Alternatively, if she's painted black, I might stand there and glug that bottle of Voss to myself so she's left there thirsty and gets upset. And therefore, I have malignly triangulated her with the water.
Right. You're controlling it also in a sense. It's plots and schemes, man. It's plots and schemes. That's all.
Well, it is, and remember, for the majority of narcissists, they don't know what they are, and they don't realize that's why they're doing it. Yes, they know they're chatting somebody up, but they don't know that they're doing it for the prime aims. Yes, they know that they've made a nasty remark to somebody or that they're giving them the cold shoulder, but they don't truly know why they're doing it. Their narcissism makes them believe they're doing it for a different reason.
I think that you're going to open a lot of minds, and I really wanted to talk to you because I was just like, who knows? Just like you said, some people maybe narcissists don't even know it, man. That's very, very interesting. So in your bio, it says, Mr. Tudor writes from his own perspective as a narcissist psychopath. Are these your words or someone else's? And if they are your words, would you be so kind and explain really what this means?
They are my words. And so the way that my psychopathy and my narcissism have developed is to give me insight into understanding not only me, but also understanding others of my kind, so that I can then relay that information to people such as yourself, your viewers and listeners. So that level of insight allows me to explain the inner workings of my kind's behavior and mine, to give you a look under the hood so that you fully understand why. Now, some people say to me, H.G, aren't your fellow narcissists annoyed with you for giving the game away? And I go, well, no, because most of them don't know what they are. So they're not going to be annoyed with me. And those, of course, that are like me and are aware, they're not accessing my work. They don't need to. So there isn't a narc club where we all get together on the third Friday of every month, and they haul me up in front of the Grand Committee of Narcissists and say, "Mr. Tudor, you are hereby charged with sharing the intimate secrets of this club."
Right.
That doesn't happen. I do this for my own purposes, like everything I do.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes when I do things, other people benefit from it. So in the same way where I say these things, all of the videos that I put out there, which I provide free of charge, educate millions of people about narcissism.
Right.
So people will say, well, that's a good thing. But I thought narcissists are horrible people. Well, no. That we are invariably horrible to some people, but some narcissists create great good in the world, but we only do it because it suits us. Right. So, for instance, take Steve Jobs. As I'm talking to you on one of his devices that he was instrumental in creating, and many of us own around the world. Yes. Yeah. And many people would say those devices are really useful, they're helpful. So, and Steve Jobs has never personally caused a problem for me, but if you were to ask the mother of his child and his daughter what they think of him, or when he shafted Steve Wozniak out of a bonus at Atari, and the other people that he had to deal with, the former head of Pepsi-Cola, they would have a different view of his behavior.
Indeed. So, so you are known as the world-renowned authority on narcissism. So please give my watchers and listeners some insight on how you began this amazing journey into the studies of narcissism.
Okay. I've always known that I'm different, and I've always known that I'm set apart and superior to people, and I always understood a lot about the way that I behaved, but I didn't necessarily have a label for it. So I knew that I manipulated people. I knew that people's reactions made me feel powerful, which is my response to what I call fuel. When other people do things for the narcissist, it fuels us, good or bad. So if somebody says, H.G, your work is absolutely brilliant, that's some fuel. If somebody cries because I've insulted what they're wearing, that fuels me as well. Right. So positive or negative. And I often say, love me or hate me, but never ignore me. So we need that validation from people. Right. So I've always known a lot about my inner workings. And then as a consequence of some observations, there's a graduate girlfriend of mine who was involved in psychology. She took me to one side in a non-judgmental way, said, H.G, I believe you're both narcissist and psychopath. And I said, how fascinating. Do tell me more. So she explained. And as I sat there, it resonated with me what she was saying. Of course, I didn't admit it to her, because if I did, that would give her power over me. Right. So I'm not going to transfer my power to her. But I said to her, well, that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you for sharing with me your thoughts and observations. Must go, have something important to do. Right. And away I went. And I went and read more about it, and it resonated with me. Now, you see, because of the way that my psychopathy and narcissism works, I am able to understand and accept what I am. If I was an unaware narcissist, I would have rejected what she had to say. Right. And even if I'd been minded to go and read about myself, I wouldn't have accepted it, because my narcissism wouldn't let me. My brand of narcissism, if I can call it that, allows me to accept what I am. Yes. And therefore, I carried on my merry way. And as part of understanding myself better, I used to reduce to writing my thoughts and observations about certain instances of interactions with people. I watched the behavior of members of my family, people that I have worked with, people I have socialized with, both narcissists and non-narcissists, making notes about the way that they interacted, denoting the way that people focused on certain things, responded in different ways. And I started to build up this body of material. And then a number of years ago, I started to think to myself, well, actually, why don't I share this information as part of the creation of a legacy? The legacy is hugely important because, as I explained earlier on in the conversation, Lord, one of the things that I must have is control. And of course, death is the ultimate threat to control. We're all going to die. Right. Irrespective of what your religious beliefs might be, at some point, the organic thing that we're in is going to stop functioning.
Indeed.
Now, that's going to be many decades away for your glorious narrator here. But the fact is, it's going to happen.
Right.
And therefore, in order to defeat that threat, I need something that lives on after me, i.e. my work, my videos, my books, my blog, and so forth. Right. And the more that I do this, and the more people that I help, the more people that I instruct in the way of the narcissist to help make sense of what's gone on, the further that I take all of that, they will tell more people. And so you get this tsunami of people that know about H.G. Tudor. Only before I had this conversation with you, I was speaking to a client over in Michigan, and she explained to me that she had been to see a psychologist who specializes in narcissism,
right,
narcissistic abuse. And she explained to me that in the first session, the psychologist said, "Now, have you listened to a gentleman called H.G. Tudor?" And she said, "I have, actually. I listen to him all the time." The psychologist said, "So do I." And that's very gratifying to me.
Of course.
So a consultation client of mine goes and sees a psychologist, and they both obviously listen to my work.
Wow.
And so the point is that I disseminate this information. And I do so in a way, because I'm not a psychologist. I am simply telling you how it is from my perspective, and also that of my brethren, as I refer to them as.
Okay.
And so it enables you to understand the way that we think, the way that we function, the way that we operate. You don't have to like it. I'm not doing this for you to like me. I'm doing it to inform you all.
Right.
Now, some people, of course, do like me because they very much appreciate that I've got them out of some awful, awful situations. Only this morning, I was speaking to a very pleasant Australian couple, helping them with a very different situation involving their son. And they're hugely appreciative. And I got a lovely email from them afterwards to explain just how much weight had came off their shoulders and how much insight I had given them. So there is, of course, that reward that comes from it all. But the point of it is I do this because it serves my purposes. Be under no doubt, I don't do this for love. I have no love in this frame of mind. I don't do it because I care. All I care about is ensuring that you receive the best information about narcissism and psychopathy.
Right.
And because I'm not a psychologist, I don't describe it in the esoteric scientific terms. I describe it in ways that people understand, which is linked to the behavior that they see around them.
Right.
And that's one of the major strengths. And I regularly use analogies and take the situation of, why is he not text messaging me? What's all that about? And if that person is a narcissist, I explain why the narcissist behaves that way.
Right.
Why does the narcissist blow hot and cold? Why does the narcissist put these things on social media? What's all that about? So these are situations that are familiar to people, but they can make sense of it by reference to those familiar instances and behaviors.
Got you, man. Wow, man. So 40 books and programs let me know you have a definite passion for writing and educating. So how has your life been changed by helping others recognize a narcissist within themselves or within others?
How has it been changed? Well, my name's become more well-known by people. It has changed in the sense that, of course, I'm now contacted by more and more people who want my help. It also means that I do attract some weirdos as well that find themselves drawn to me. Invariably, there's a little group of unaware narcissists that sort of hoover me from time to time, which I find entertaining. They don't, because I largely ignore them, and that upsets them. So it causes them to scurry away to a little corner of the internet and make up some nonsense about me by suggesting that I'm people that I'm not.
Right.
And but it's enabled me, of course, the core principles that I've always written about and spoken about have always been there. But of course, like a huge supercomputer, I take in this information, and there might be someone's situation that's a little bit different. So I'm able to utilize that, acquire that character trait, and utilize it as a form of experience when advising somebody else. So I absorb all of this information and utilize it to ensure that the delivery of my information remains absolutely at the top.
Got you. So, all right. So how prevalent is narcissism in today's society? And are there more narcissistic men than women, or is it evenly balanced?
I'll answer the second question first. It's roughly evenly balanced. Male narcissism tends to be a bit more obvious because with certain, not all, but with certain male narcissists, they are that archetypal type of narcissist that I mentioned earlier on, the the grandiose, boasting individual. But it's a roughly 50-50 split. It's just female narcissists tend to be more difficult to spot. Are there more narcissists? How prevalent is it? I always explain anecdotally, it's about 1 in 6. Now, to put that in some context, it is, and there are more of us than people realize.
Yeah.
However, there are some people who have very little to do with narcissists. They're not in their family. They've never had a romantic involvement with them. They don't really have it. They haven't any in their social group. They might have somebody at work, but they don't really have much to do with them. They could have been served by a narcissist when they bought a hot dog on the street corner, but they wouldn't really know it.
Right.
Their leader of their country is probably a narcissist, but they don't really have any personal involvement with that person. So that individual has very little to do with narcissists. And then there are other people who have them everywhere. That every single relationship has been with the narcissist. They've got them in their family. They're in their social group. They surround them. They have them at work. And it follows, of course, that if some people have very few, other people are going to have more than their fair share.
Right.
So, and of course, what tends to happen, Lord, is that people, when they start to understand about narcissism, and they are the type of individual that attracts narcissists, they start to see narcissists left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
And they often say, that can't, they often say, well, H.G, that can't be right. That can't be right. I'm seeing all of these narcissists. And I go, well, no. Sometimes it's because your emotional thinking causes you to see narcissists everywhere, when it's actually it's their type of individual that attracts narcissists, but also their emotional thinking causes them to see a lot of narcissists around them when not everybody is. So sometimes there is a sort of exaggerated effect there. But for the most part, they're right about it, because if you're the type of person that attracts narcissists, you're obviously going to have a lot around you. And when you learn more about what our kind look like, you're going to spot them.
Gotcha. Indeed. So is a narcissist born, or is it an acquired behavior or mindset?
Narcissist is created. So there has to be two aspects to it. The seed, as I call it, which is a genetic predisposition towards narcissism. So you have to have that sort of possibility of becoming one, that capability of becoming one. And then you have to have what's called a lack of control environment. And the lack of control environment could be being physically abused. It could be being sexually abused. It could be that whatever you do, it's not good enough. You scored 2 goals, why didn't you score 3? You got 75% in your examination, why didn't you get 85%? You ran the 200 meters in this time, why didn't you do it 2 seconds faster?
Yes.
You climb that hill and there's another one. Some instances, it's being told that you are extra special and brilliant at everything you do when actually you're not. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a per se awful environment. It could be an instance of trauma, seeing your parents murdered in a home invasion, for instance, seeing your parents killed in a car accident. So you have to have the seed, the genetic predisposition, and that must be allied with the lack of control environment. And so some people find themselves in a lack of control environment, but there's no genetic predisposition, therefore they don't become a narcissist. Okay. Some people have the genetic predisposition, but they don't have the lack of control environment. They don't become a narcissist. And then some people have both, and thus they become a narcissist. And the narcissism is basically a form of coping mechanism, which says you found yourself in an environment and you were susceptible to this environment where basically you didn't know how to cope. And so the narcissist comes along and says, we will cope for you. And it's very good at doing that. The problem is it creates problems for everybody else.
Hey, man. I'm loving this, man. You're truly educated right now, man. And I've enjoyed every single bit of it. So Christian Bale in the movie American Psycho is what many see as, you spoke about it a little bit before, as being the epitome of a narcissist. Is this a close representation of a narcissist, or does its character just fall into a category of many different types?
Well, what you've always got to remember is that when you're dealing with any representation on screen, you are dealing with a television portrayal.
Right.
Okay. Now, I'll give you an example of this. The name of the film escapes me, but Jason Bateman was in it, and a female comedian whose face I can picture, but I can't quite name her. That doesn't matter, really, as to who's in it. But she plays a character who defrauds people. She engages in identity theft. I think that might be the name of the film. And so I think it's Melissa McCarthy. And so what she does is she steals people's identities and then runs off incurring huge expenditure on their credit cards and bank cards. Right. So she goes to a bar, she buys loads of drinks for everybody, she's really popular, she's whooping it up. She then goes on a spending spree. And she does this without due regard for who this is hurting, who this is affecting. Anyway, Bateman's character catches up with her and she goes to prison, but then there's a sort of a redemption that she realizes the error of her ways. Now, initially, she fits with being a narcissist. Why? She acts with a rampant sense of entitlement to take other people's money. She has no emotional empathy for how they're affected by it. She shows grandiose behaviors because she's a show-off. She exaggerates her levels of success. She has a preoccupation with being wealthy, but won't work for it, which is both magical thinking and a lack of accountability. She shows a range of narcissistic manipulations in the behavior that she engages in. She shows various aspects of the narcissistic dynamic, and she has no boundary recognition. She assets appropriates quite freely. So she would tick all of the boxes of being a narcissist, but then, out of nowhere, she has remorse for her actions, right, and looks to change. A narcissist wouldn't do that. Right. Why? Now, why does she have to have that? Because basically, people go to watch films as a form of escapism, and they like that curve, and they like to believe that even in the most darkest of hearts, that there is some goodness there. Right. And actually, there isn't. But these are films, and they have to do that for the character arc. So what can often happen, Lord, is you will get a television series or a film that does a fairly accurate portrayal up to a point of a narcissist, but then gets it wrong, usually to do with instances of somehow redeeming themselves, because that is a bit of a trope of the irredeemable character who suddenly finds the right way and the path back to redemption, because audiences like that. So, so we have to bear that in mind. Now, with Christian Bale's portrayal of Patrick Bateman, first of all, Bale is a superlatively talented actor.
Yes, he is.
Absolutely fantastic. Now, one of the things that has to be born of it is the perennial question with American Psycho is any of it real? And so you've obviously read the book and seen the film. So, for example, when he goes into the bar and he tries to pay for some drinks, and the girl says, "These aren't valid, you'll have to pay cash." Right. And she turns away to fix his drink. And he says something along the lines of, "I'd like to cut your head off and play with your blood." Right. And she doesn't react to it. Right. Does she not react because she can't hear him because the music's so loud? Or does she not react because it was never said and it's just in his head? And there's various instances throughout which suggest that actually none of this actually occurs. Sorry, however, that wouldn't necessarily stop him being a narcissist, you see, because he acts in a way where he has no emotional empathy for other people, but he just doesn't follow through on the things that he'd like to do because he's not that detached in that sense. Right. So he's a narcissist. He has this sense of entitlement to treat women like objects, that he is preoccupied with objects. In fact, objects fascinate him more, in a sense, than people, although he sees them as objects also. He has this preoccupation with status, with clothing, the way that everything's described in huge detail with regard to what people are wearing, right, and so on and so forth. And in actual fact, although he's a vice president, he's the sort of cookie cutter vice president. Mm-hmm. He's not that important within it, but he has access to wealth. So he would fit with being a narcissist. Would he fit with being a psychopath? Well, that depends on whether the activity he engages in is accurate or not. Right. And of course, not all psychopaths, of course, go running around with chainsaws and just their sneakers, running after prostitutes down hotel corridors. We only tend to do that on Friday evenings.
You said we only.
So with the portrayal, there are lots of accuracies about it. Uh-huh. But there's also, for instance, when he rings the attorney and starts confessing to what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And when he rings his secretary, Jean, from the street, and he seems to be having a bit of a meltdown, a narcissist could behave that way as a consequence of a threat to control or a fuel crisis, but a psychopath wouldn't.
Okay.
The psychopath wouldn't exhibit those anxiety levels that he shows. So that part is to make him look like he's a sort of tormented soul. So that might actually be the case, that he wishes he was a psychopath, but he's just simply a narcissist. And that he wishes he was this character. There's also, again, sort of the magical thinking. You recall afterwards when the police, and he's having a shootout with the police, and he fires the gun, and it blows the cop car up.
Right.
And then he looks at the gun as if to go, did that really happen? And again, did it? Or is this something that's just a magical thinking of Patrick Bateman? I mean, one could dedicate hours to dissecting all of this. It's very interesting. And of course, Bret Easton Ellis is a talented author. So you have that aspect. In terms of psychopathy, I think the most realistic portrayal I've seen is in the film No Country for Old Men by Javier Bardem, when he plays Anton Chigurh. That individual there embodies the coldness of the psychopath, the absence of remorse, the absence of fear and anxiety, that sheer recklessness as towards people's lives, where he decides on the flip of a coin what's going to happen to somebody. Bardem's portrayal is a very skilled one there.
Yeah,
so that's a good portrayal of a psychopath. And of course, it has to remember that you have pure psychopaths, you have pure narcissists, then you have the hybrid, which I am, narcissistic psychopath. So, and those different categories have different features about them. Something I'm going to go into greater detail in some of my work in the future.
Gotcha. Well, look, man, this has been amazing, and let's see here. What can we expect in the near future for H.G. Tudor?
In the near future, well, you can expect plenty of excellent videos on my YouTube channel. Across a variety of subjects. I obviously do a lot about Harry's wife, because lots of people are interested in her, and that extends the reach to a lot of people. Yeah. But there are other people that are going to be dealt with, and other topics also. At the moment, that platform is attracting a lot of my attention. There are various books which are part written, which at some point I will conclude. And there's other material that I'll be adding to my knowledge vault. Primarily, that will be all about empaths. So I'll be providing a lot more information about the different categories of empaths in terms of their schools and their cadres. So that's some of the material that's going to be coming forward in the near future.
Well, listen, I just want to thank you very, very much for this amazing show. So much information, and so much more information to be given, actually. I mean, I think that so many people are going to be educated and really move towards you to have those conversations or have your services, and just to learn, man, because knowledge is key. And I think this has truly been amazing. I've enjoyed it. I was looking forward to it, to be honest with you. I was really looking forward to it. And so I thank you once again. I thank Jane. I'll truly let her know that, we had this conversation. And just once again, man, I really appreciate you. Thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with me. And anytime that you want to come back and talk about anything, you're welcome. You're home. Come put your feet up. You'll be in control.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I love it. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But thank you.
It's kind of you to extend that invitation. I look forward to taking you up on that.
Yes, sir. Hey, please do. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is yours truly, the Lord Nelson, that is, from the podcast Live and Loud with the Lord on the CMS Network with Mr. H.G. Tudor. Yeah. Thank you so much, young man. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Keen students of my work know that I categorize narcissists into schools and cadres. The schools range from the lower lesser all the way up to and including the ultra. The subschools of narcissists have certain similarities. For instance, none of us have emotional empathy, and we all manipulate. There are also significant differences and variations on a theme. For instance, some narcissists operate with a facade, but the nature of that facade varies from an intermittent one, a facade of helplessness, a facade of helpfulness, a facade of superiority. The nature of the manipulations varies between the different subschools. Some subschools have a limited manipulative palette. Others have a more extensive one. Some narcissists are wholly aggressive. Others are a mixture of both aggressive and passive-aggressive, and yet others again are mainly or exclusively passive-aggressive in those behaviours. My categorization to the schools has been done to enable you to understand more of the behaviours of the narcissists, so that you can fine-tune your own research through my various videos.
Free of charge, can't afford to miss it, we won't be ignored. No need for knocking, come on in. Bring your family and your friends. Got you geeked and tuning in, you two watching or listening. Music is the major topic, enjoy audio erotic. When the merch arrives, go copy, help me monetize and profit. Mix the genres up like salads, rock to reggae, brace the balance.
Turn it up. You're listening to Live and Loud with the Lord, Nelson, that is.